Praise be to Jesus. Hi, everyone. Okay, let's continue here. February 12, 2016. Cuba to be the capital of unity, says Pope Francis. After signing a joint statement in this capital with the Patriarch of Moscow and all Russia, the Pope praised the Cuban people, and especially President Raul Castro, who was present in the historic event. Quote, "I appreciate its active readiness. If it continues this way, Cuba will be the capital of unity," unquote, said Pope Francis. Okay. February 15th. Pope Francis meets with children who wrote letters for a new book when asked about his love for Jesus. Pope Francis says, quote, "I do not know if I truly love Jesus. I try to love him, but I am sure that he loves me. I'm quite certain of this," unquote. He said his favorite thing about being Pope was, quote, "being around people," unquote. Okay, you need to hold on just for a minute here. I need to close the door here. They're vacuuming the hallway outside, and it might get a little noisy. Okay. February 18th. Pope Francis on Donald Trump. Quote, "This man is not Christian," unquote. When asked specifically about Trump's proposal, Pope Francis said, quote, "A person who only thinks about building walls, wherever they may be, and not building bridges is not Christian," unquote, he said. According to reporters who were on the plane with the pontiff, the Pope stressed that he was not suggesting whom American voters should support in the election. Quote, "I am not going to get involved in that. I would only say that this man is not Christian if he has said things like that," unquote. Huffington Post. February 18th. Pope Francis says contraception can be acceptable in regions hit by Zika virus. Another open door. Wall Street Journal, while trying to open up that door like he is with the Amazon Synod. February 18th, Pope Francis renews passport as Jorge Mario Bergoglio. Okay, why is that news? That's from ABC News. February 18th. Yeah, this is a long one. In-flight press conference from Mexico to Rome. When asked if Catholics in a second union can receive communion, Pope Francis said, quote, "This is the last thing. Integrating in the church doesn't mean receiving communion. I know married Catholics in a second union who go to church once or twice a year and say, 'I want communion,' as if joining in communion were an award. It's a work towards integration. All doors are open, but we cannot say, from here on they can have communion. Oh, from here on they can have communion." Yeah. This would be an injury also to marriage, to the couple, because it wouldn't allow them to proceed on this path of integration. And those two were happy. They used a very beautiful expression. We don't receive Eucharistic communion, but we receive communion when we visit hospitals, and in this, and this, and this. Their integration is that if there is something more, the Lord will tell them, but it's a path, a road, unquote. Pope Francis was asked, quote, "Some wonder how a church that claims to be merciful, how can the church forgive a murderer easier than someone who has divorced and remarried?" He replied, I like this question. Yeah, I would think so. On the family, 2 synods have spoken. The Pope has spoken on this all year in the Wednesday catechisms. The question is true. You pose it very well. A reporter again brought up the vote on same-sex unions and the 2003 Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith document that expressly states that Catholic parliamentarians must not vote for these laws. She asked if this document is still in effect and what is the position of a Catholic parliamentarian must take. Pope Francis replied, quote, I do not remember that 2003 document from the Congregation of the Doctrine of the Faith well, but every Catholic parliamentarian must vote according their well-formed conscience. I would say just this. I believe it is sufficient because, I say well-formed because it is not the conscience of what seems to me. I remember when matrimony for persons of the same sex was voted on in Buenos Aires, and the votes were tied. And at the end, one said to advise the other, quote, but it is clear to you. No, me neither, but we're going to lose like this. But if we don't go there, we won't be a quorum. The other said, quote, if we have a quorum, we will give the vote to Kirchner. And the other said, I prefer to give it to Kirchner and not Bergoglio. And they went ahead. This is not a well-formed conscience on people of the same sex. I repeat what I said on the trip to Rio de Janeiro. It's in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, Catholic News Agency. February 21st. Pope Francis against the death penalty. Criminals too have the right to life. Oh, really? Right, there's, let's not even get into the death penalty. Christians must work to abolish the death penalty and improve prison conditions, Pope Francis said. The commandment, thou shalt not kill, has absolute value and concerns both the innocent and the guilty, he said. You know, this whole thing about the death penalty here, I'm going to talk for a couple of minutes. God punishes people, and he expects people to be punished in this life for, things like killing other people and whatever. In the application that, Pope Francis keeps on twisting what Scripture is actually saying. Now, some people say, I was reading this, all right, some people were saying that the woman who Jesus told that he would not condemn her for adultery, you remember that? They were getting ready to stone her. That's in the gospel. All right. Well, what I figured out, or what I think I figured out, hopefully with the help of heaven, and this is correct, is that when Jesus says, "I will not neither do I condemn you," I think is the right words. All right. So, is he talking about her physical body? I believe not, and the reason is because if Jesus is talking about her physical body, about condemning her physical body to stoning, then that directly contradicts what Father has said, I looked up some scriptures. There's quite a few scriptures having to do with, people paying for their sins. And, adultery in the Old Testament was, the judgment there was death by stoning. So did Jesus contradict his Father? No. Jesus doesn't contradict anything in the Old Testament. All right, so what was Jesus talking about? What he's talking about, I believe, is he doesn't condemn her spirit. In other words, she doesn't necessarily going to go to hell because she committed adultery. All right, so that's what I think is going on there. But, Francis and the death penalty. All right, February 24th. Pope Francis wants more dialogue with Islam. For Pope Francis, dialogue with Islam is a core issue. He recently voiced hopes to meet a major Sunni leader, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar Mosque, Ahmed El-Tayeb. Quote, I want to meet him. I know that he would like it, the Pope said. Catholic News Agency. February 28th. Excerpts from Pope Francis's children's book. Pope Francis answers if he was ever an altar boy this way. He writes, Dear Alessio, yes, I was an altar boy. And you? What part among the altar boys do you have? It's easier to do now, you know. You might know that when I was a kid, Mass was celebrated different than today. Back then, the priest faced the altar, which was next to the wall and not the people. Then the book with which he said the Mass, the Missal, was placed on the right side of the altar. But before reading of the Gospel, it always had to be moved to the left side. That was my job, to carry it from right to left. It was exhausting. The book was heavy. I picked it up with all my energy, but I wasn't so strong. I picked it up once and fell down, so the priest had to help me. Some job I did. The Mass wasn't in Italian then. The priest spoke, but I didn't understand anything, and neither did my friends. So for fun, we do imitations of the priest, messing up the words a bit to make up weird sayings in Spanish. We had fun, and we really enjoyed serving Mass. Unquote. That's from Loyola Press. Let me check the time. It's 12 minutes already. All right, so we're going to stop there. Okay, so we'll talk to you tomorrow. Bye.